Alright, welcome to Northwoods Forge. Welcome back. I put a few feelers out on projects you guys would like to see, mainly for you beginner guys. Didn't get a whole lot of response, which is surprising, but I did get an intriguing question about hardy tools and beginners wanting to make hardy tools. So that's what we're going to do today. And I got thinking about it, and normally I'd be using all sorts of tooling, and we would whip this out in half an hour and have a tool of some sort. But the question was, what does a beginner want to see? And so I'm going to do this with just one tool, and we're going to make the tool to do it. I don't recommend this, but once again, going back to the beginners, I know limited resources and such. We're going to make a hand chisel, which is a butcher cut. So what a butcher cut is a 45-degree chisel. 45 degrees this way, perfectly straight this way. And that's going to set our shoulders. Normally, if you're doing hot work, you want to make your punches out of S7, H13, even 4140. Cold roll is not the way to go, but like I said, limited resources for beginners. We'll get through this with this punch or chisel, but it's not going to be pretty when we get done. I mean, the chisel's going to be junk, basically. So we'll forge that. I'll do that, and you can see what we got. And then hardy holes. Usually they're not perfectly square. Usually they're tapered in one way or another. All the hardy holes are different sizes, so we're going to size it to our hardy hole, this specific anvil. My hole is it measures out 1 1/16 inch. General rule of thumb is when you're making your hardy hole or hardy tool, 1.5 times the size of your hardy hole. Normally I would use square stock, but once again, the larger square stock in a good tool steel is not as readily available as round stock. Round stock's pretty common. So once again, going with the beginner concept, I have 1.5 inch round stock here in 4140. Now when you do make your hardy tool, make it out of something good. Do not, I know you're a beginner and you're thinking, oh, I can just make it out of this or make it out of that. Get a piece of known steel and get a good piece of steel. 4140 makes pretty good tools. It's not the best, but it's common and it makes a decent tool. Like I said before, S7, H13, those make really excellent hot tools. They have a real good hot resistance. But anyhow, we're gonna use this piece of 4140. What else is there? What else do you guys want to know? So I have some marks on this piece of steel that I laid out. So I did the whole laid out my square, and then you'll see on the sides, because this is round, there's a little more layout. You don't have to do this per se, but I do because it makes a better end product. So what I'm going to end up doing, as you see, these lines follow my lines on my square. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center punch these corners. And what that's going to tell me is how deep I chisel my lines into. And we'll get to that when we get to it. But yeah. Alright. I guess let's get forging. take it over to the grinder and make it sharp. So here we go with our punch, or our chisel. I don't know why I keep calling it a punch. 45 degrees, sharpened, flat side. So what we're going to do is take this flat side, and we're going to come in on our lines and chisel in. That's gonna push that material that way, and that'll leave area for us to hammer so we don't ruin our shoulder. Alright, so I'm gonna mark this out with some center punches. I'll be able to see that when it's heated up. These markers lines are gonna go away once I heat it up naturally. So I'm gonna mark that, get it in the forge, and we'll start hammering. This off after I go across each time, because you're going to take, it's not going to, your tool's not going to last. So always cool it off. So we got one, let's start working on our next one. Ready for another heat. is. This is what I'll do is I'll size it in here. I'll turn it too because I don't want it to go in one way. I recommend that you don't. You notice I'm not hitting it real hard. You don't want to get this thing stuck in here, believe me. So you want it at least to go probably 80% of the way. So now that I got it this far, I'm going to heat it up a little more, drive it in a little bit more, nice and slow. But and then we'll start setting it down and get our shoulders fixed. Where we came in with our butcher cut, it's going to be all messed up. You're going to have rounded pieces from your hammer blows. Don't worry about it. All that was to set our depth so we knew how far to forge our square down to. This is what is going to set our shoulders, is when I put it in the hardy hole and set it down. Another little tip here, I'm putting some release agent on my hole, so when I do drive it down, it doesn't weld itself in there or get stuck too bad. Rotate it so it fits every way. And get another good heat. And I'm using a small hammer because if I drive it in with a sledge, we may never get it back out. Slow and steady wins the race, at least on this particular case. probably one more heat, then we should be okay. Alright, I'm not going to go into detail on how to forge this out. I mean, all depends on what kind of tool you want. Hot cut, whatever. But yeah, this is how you make a Hardy tool the beginner way. There are much easier ways to do it, but when you're just starting out and don't have the tools to do it, this is how you do it. Word of caution, when you do make this and you're all done forging it and it's hot like this, don't leave it in here, because we've really heated this up, and if you leave it in here and it cools over a couple hours and your anvil cools off, you may never ever possibly get this back out. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell, folks. I hope this answers some of your guys' questions. Like I said, there's a lot easier way of doing it, but for you beginners, here you go. Make all the Hardy tools you want. You can forge this out into a cone mandrel, forge it out for a hot cut, turning forks, whatever. Bigger ones you can make blocks out of for forging blades, beveling blocks, all that good stuff. If you used 4140 like I did, give you a little tip on the heat treat, quenching oil. Once again, it's not recommended, but being that we're talking beginners here and they don't have a lot of money, vegetable oil. Quench it in vegetable oil. Do not quench 4140 in water. It'll crack and then you'll be all upset because you just spent 2 hours of making this beautiful Hardy tool and now it's junk. Yeah, so quenching vegetable oil. Get it up in your forge to orange, bright orange, which is 1650 or so. Non-magnetic. When a magnet doesn't stick, general rule of thumb, because you guys don't have fancy heat treat ovens. Get it up non-magnetic, quench it in vegetable oil, and then it's going to be too hard to do anything with. So you have to draw a temper on the tool. So what I recommend is that you clean it all up so you got a shiny surface somewhere, and then just take a torch, or better yet, throw it in your oven in your house, and at about 400 degrees, and let it sit in there for a few hours, and you'll be golden. Yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. Yeah, there you go. That's the beginner's way for Hardy tool. If there's any other project questions you guys got, please ask, and I will do my best to try and answer some questions. I had a vague one about forge welding, which I may do a video on in a little bit. We'll probably do a chain link and show you guys how to forge weld chain links, only because it's good practice on forge welding. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it's something that can be repetitive. Once again, I'm a big stickler on hammer control, and that'll teach you hammer control because you're trying to make all the links identical. So once again, hammer control. I mean, on this, I mean, you guys saw me hammering on it, and there's hardly any hammer marks on here. That's what we want to strive for. Anyway, that's it in a nutshell, folks. That's your Hardy tool. Looks like I made it so it fits all 4 ways. That's kind of important. You don't want to be fumbling around figuring out which way to turn it. If you, a little tip, if by chance you do end up doing that, what I like to do is I'll put a mark, grind a score mark or something towards the horn of the anvil. That way you always know which way it's going to be facing. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Please share this video. Help me get some followers here. Alright, thanks guys.